at the same time, we've got a voice in our heads that tells us what's good and bad, right? And we've also got a constitution, and we've got a few good books that tell us what's right from wrong. Do we need those documents? Do we actually need a Bible? Do we need a constitution to tell us what's right from wrong?
That's a good question.
If we've got that voice in our head, do we actually need those documents?
Anything can be manipulated. However, I think there is a value to the writings, and this is why. I think that people are so often corruptible, and it says it like this in the Bible, okay? So like when Moses got the law from God on Mount Sinai, right? Like back in the old days, like on, let's say, Garden of Eden mode, right? Adam and Eve, they basically knew what was right and wrong. They didn't need books to tell them because they kind of knew.
Exactly.
The snake tricked them or whatever. The serpent, it wasn't probably a snake, but the evilness tricked them and they did the bad stuff. And then from there, it just kind of amplified, okay? Well, after a while, after a certain point, people become so perverted and twisted. And I'm saying like moral perversion. I'm not talking just sexual perversion. It's the twisting, wickedness. And like it gets so far off base that after a certain point on Mount Sinai, and then they lived in Egypt for a while, right? Mm-hmm. And Egypt was representative of the evil world culture, worldly, do what feels good at the moment. They totally disconnected through conscious choice for a temporary self-aggrandizement, like to live this way rather than a clean way, right? And so by the time they come out of Egypt, like it was messed up, man. Here's how it like... So they had to have laws. They had to write them down in the Torah, right? God had to actually tell them, thou shalt not kill, right? Why did he have to tell them that stuff?
It seems like a no-brainer, doesn't it?
It seems like it, but the fact that he had to tell them not to kill each other was a witness against their state at the time. So you wouldn't have to tell them if they were doing it, right? But if everyone's killing each other, then you have to write it down in a book. So if people ain't killing each other, you don't need to write it down. But if everyone thinks that's fine, you need to correct the behavior. And so there was 10 big ones like, hey, you need to love me. You need to like not do this. You need to not, you need to like take a break and think about me at least once a day. You need to not kill each other. You need to honor your parents. You need to do these things. You need to not steal stuff from each other. And then you get into the 613 other commandments in the Bible. It's like, thou shalt not strike thy mother. Is that not automatic knowledge?
Well, if she burned the roast, she might have it coming.
But see, but no, that's what I'm saying. So the law, and that's why the Bible says, man, and it even reiterates in the New Testament, and people get it all whacked out of like context, is like, the law was a witness against us.
Exactly.
It was the fact that he had to tell us what some of the obvious stuff is a proof that we are way messed up. Like, I have to tell you not to like have a kid with your sister, or I need to tell you like not to like punch your mom in the face, or like cut a piece off of a living animal and eat it so you get its spirit. Like, there's dietary laws. Like, I have to tell you this stuff. This is a witness against Israel. Holy smokes, was Israel way messed up. So, yes, it was required to straighten them out. And I think that today that was applicable as well.
And I think something with it, too, is like we've talked about all the other tools. You can use a hammer to build something, or you can use it to kill someone. I think the Bible is a tool. Mm-hmm. And I think that, if you use it the right way, it's a really positive thing. I like reading the Bible because I find some sort of peace in it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what it's there for, is to give you that peace of mind and that reminder and that, that spirituality piece there. But it can also be used as a weapon, just like anything else.
Yeah, just like any tool and its application, and whoever's using that tool can be used for either good or evil. And that's the difference between sitting down and reading the Bible by yourself or with a group of friends and getting something from it, having a meaningful discussion like we're doing here about things that actually make a difference, versus putting on your Sunday best to go stand in the pews with the neighbors to try to keep up with them and stand and listen to the guy in the hat. The guy in the hat, I'll tell you.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Let's get real here for a minute, because it's all kind of been leading up to this, because it sucks, man, when you go to try to get closer to the higher power and there's some guy standing in the way, standing in between you two.
Who's hijacking your relationship with God so that he can reach his own fulfillment on some deal.
Yeah.
For the company or whoever he's working for. Yeah.
I remember going to a few Roman Catholic services as a child, and I just remember being creeped out by the whole situation, man. The whole pomp and circumstance, the music, just the eeriness, the candles, the incense, the guy in the hat, the robes, all the wine.
Well, it's an ancient collection of effective techniques which really puts people in a certain mode to be put in a situation where they're going to listen to what the guy has to say.
Oh, yeah.
And if the guy had good stuff to say, which like the gospel part, I always like that part, where the guy talks about like the stuff Jesus did, but then the rest of it is used it can be used to subjugate people at the same time. So it's like you said, that's a very huge responsibility. But I think in general, what happens is when spiritual walk degenerates into a religious situation, okay? Because religion in of itself doesn't seem like it's very productive in a lot of ways. But like good moral things being used religiously is great. But yeah, it seems like, dude, the Bible says at the end there too, like, Babylon has fallen, man. It has become the habitation of every unclean spirit and foul bird. It's talking about religion in the last days. It's saying like it's going to fall. And I think that the Garden of Eden template was ideal, where you walk around and visit with your Father in heaven, right? And then it got screwed up. So the Messiah had to come. Moses had to come. And he had to explain like, hey, Israel, like we need to like not slap our mother around and not murder each other and do all this. God told me like to remind you of this deal. And so, okay, they're good for a little while, and then they started acting religious, which is on the other swing of the pendulum. So instead of being totally godless, they had created this other terrible system, which is this like stupid hierarchy system of religious superiority and spiritual superiority, which in reality is BS, man. I mean, these religious people ain't any cooler than anyone else if they're honest. Everyone's corrupt and everyone's like way short of awesomeness, right? And we're all in the same boat. But when they use it to like build this giant like control empire to lord over people for their own selfish purposes, it's like bearing gross false witness against the true spirit of who actually loves us and made us. Because that wasn't his program of operation, that was ours.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the fun thing about this, though, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Rex, Ms. Kacie, is that we've been doing this for thousands of years. People have been playing religion, if you will, for a long, long time. And it's only within the last couple decades, couple generations here that we have the technology to hold a conversation like this and share it with the rest of the world and try to open up ideas, open up minds.
Well, I think that's happened over time. They just get killed a lot.
Yeah.
They call them heretics. People who are thinking, and that's, I mean, I understand like it challenges their control structure, and if their goal is to maintain absolute control, well then they're doing the right thing to kill everyone and rip their tongues out with the pliers. Dude, like last time I was over in Europe, like I went to all these different castles and they have the chapel, right? And in every single one they have the church, and right next to it was the torture chamber, okay? And this is like, church in America ain't like church in Europe, man.
No,
like
sir.
European stuff is old. Like this is back in the good old days where like, you don't respect what the church guys said, they will tear off your body parts with these rusty iron instruments. And they did it within screaming range of the church so that when you're praying, that you would hear them being tortured to keep you in line, see? It's like not really happy system. Like over here, we get like the really milquetoast version. You know what I mean? So I don't think America realizes how bad it can be. And so like a lot of the people, there's millions of people who I think maybe were in touch with the autonomy of having a relationship with God rather than with appeasing the religious dictator of the day, right? But they really got tested, man. And they were underground. They had to be stealthy, and most of them who popped out with it got shredded.
And here we are now having this discussion in pretty open fashion, and unless something goes awry, we're going to put it on the internet and the rest of the world's going to listen to it. And at that point, are they going to come and pull out our tongues? Are they going to string us up like they did at the end of Braveheart? And
well, they're getting smarter though, Lou, now. See, they're getting smarter. They don't do it that way anymore. They've had to go stealth mode. Since the late 1700s, like the Holy Roman Empire had kind of failed. People had gotten onto that deal. Because they once again had seen the light. There was a certain amount of like transparency that was granted, like of what the ancients actually had recorded that their father actually wanted them to be like. And their tyrannical system was exposed of religious control for manipulation through money so they can buy huge tracts of land and be kings of the world and have whores in their, I mean, unbelievable. If you read history, it's not a happy story. But like, so like after a certain point, like the system had become ineffective, right? Because it would not work anymore. People were onto them. People knew the truth. And once you plant that seed of the truth, then it fell apart. So they had to go covert. They had to go stealthy. They had to change their style. They had to make it look attractive. They are now competing with the truth. And the truth is way sexier than the fake truth they put out. Their truth kind of sucks, man. It's like exhausting. You know what I mean?
It is.
But when you hear the real truth, which is like God loves you, connect with him, and kind of it'll be okay. Like have a relationship with him, man, and he will straighten you out. Like
and
rather
love, and
than
love
like,
each other.
Yeah.
And love each other. And
rather than kissing the royal ring while they whip you, right? That's their version. So like that other one's way better than the false one, right? Mm-hmm. So now they have to compete in a different way, but they can't use the truth to do it because then they lose the power. That's the problem with true religious experience with the actual creator is he is a liberating force. He gives you back your free will, but tells you, and then you willingly follow him and love him. But you are now freed from the world system, you know what I mean? So it's a giant threat. They can't do it. They operate with different means now. So they use like these stealth modes of like creating other lures to get you in.
The pseudo-truths.
Yeah.
And I remember discussing in one of the previews that we filmed for your channel for this, talking about our quest for the universal truths that we're going to try to find in our podcast here. And I think you nailed it right there. The truths that any sort of establishment wants you to believe versus the ones that you know in yourselves to be true. And that's pretty much the answer, I think, as far as any kind of truth goes. Is it's in you already. You know it. But you just have to listen to it.
Yeah.
So I guess we did it. We don't even need to have another podcast. We got all the answers done on the first show.
I hope so. I mean, it's funny because like all that stuff can be summarized, and the guy said it best. You know, he pointed at the scribes and the Pharisees, the guy with the beard. Remember him? Okay. And they're all acting holy and religious because, and that's kind of the route they're going again here. Is their mechanism for keeping control is to establish a system where you got to be the smartest guy religiously to be cool. So like, you're not a cool religious person unless you memorize your 8,000 verses, unless you understand all the precepts of the faith, unless you can expound upon these deep religious hidden meanings and all these wonderful things that only the learned in the religion can understand, right? All this stuff. And he's like, you know what? That's a bunch of crap. These little kids get it. And you smart guys, you scribes and Pharisees, you don't get it. You guys will never, ever see the kingdom of heaven. These little kids get it so easily. It's like, Papa, I love you. Will you take care of me? That's it. That's what a little kid understands. Mm-hmm. But all these smart guys try to overcomplicate it, and they convolute the whole truth, man. And pretty soon you're jumping through flaming hoops to outdo each other in some religious superiority trip to where you completely forget that God even exists.
Yeah, and you've created some false God that you're suddenly worshiping.
Yeah, which is your own awesome knowledge skills. Mm-hmm. And that's not cool.
Yeah, you start worshiping your own ego, man. It can be a dangerous thing.
So, I mean, it's always simple, and people want to have these religious, like, super in-depth deals a lot of times, which is cool, but, like, a lot of these, like, people who are the most like, vehement supporters of their particular denomination get into all these mechanics, and it's like, okay, so you understand these 5 points of the whatever's better than me, that's for sure. I can see that. But, like, how come you miss the obvious number 1 point, which is, thou shalt not be an asshole? How about let's start off with that one? How about let's love God? How about that? Where'd that go? well, I was too busy yelling at everyone how smart I am. Yeah, apparently you missed that one, man. Like, let's get back to the truth, you know?
And the truth, like we said, isn't that hard. It's right there, and it's always been right there.
It's flopping on her face like a big carp. You know, it's like right on her head, and we don't even notice it because we're too busy in our trance, you know?
Exactly.
But little kids get it.
Yeah.
So, unless we become like these little children, we shall in no wise inherit the kingdom of heaven.
That's pretty good stuff.
Yeah, it is.
That's pretty good stuff.
I like it.
We're going to take one more break here and come back with a wrap-up of the show for the week and kind of preview things to come here on Rex Reviews.